What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is season 6, episodes 12 and 13. And all I gleaned from them 2 episodes was this question: what do Heather and Whitney really want from Meredith? Because it's starting to feel like even if she does what they are asking her to do, it won't be good enough. That could just be me, but that's how I'm kind of feeling. Okay, but let's get into these reviews. So y'all know sometimes before we get into it, we get a little spicy. So I did the standalone spicy corner, and if you are interested, please check the link below. We talk about Heather being on Watch What Happens Live, Lisa being a part of Worst Cooks in America, Bronwyn and Todd separating after 9 years of marriage, as well as Jen Shaw being released and Mary Cosby's son, Robert Jr., staying in jail till February. So if you're interested in my thoughts, please check that link down in the description box below. All right, y'all. So let's talk about episode 12. So it opens up and we are at the airport. Bronwyn peeks behind a column down in baggage claims, looking directly at Todd like something out of a horror movie. Just pop behind it. I said, girl. And she has on one of those inflatable outfits, and she's a sloth. So she jumps out behind Todd once she gets closer. And Todd is like, ooh. And she was like, do you know what I am? And Todd's like, no, I don't. And she's like, I'm a sloth. The fastest sloth you've ever seen. He's like, oh, okay, girl. I'm going to be honest. Y'all gonna say, Leah, you hate fun and all of that stuff, and I'll take it. But in all honesty, that would her constantly showing up to pick me up in inflatables would irritate me by the third inflatable outfit. I'm just just being honest. The airport to me is already like an overstimulating place as it is. My friend just sent me a TikTok, and I think it was supposed to be like what the airport is like 24/7 or during the holidays. Let me show y'all that right quick.
Boarding call. Excuse me, my flight's in 5 minutes. Please, Order 67. Liquids, electronic, and cheese. I already told you my flight in 5 minutes.
I told y'all, the airport is a lot. It is. And my thing about it is, even when you're leaving the airport, it's a lot. Like, depending on if you get dropped off at the back of the airport, you got to walk a long distance, maybe go down a couple of escalators, or even take a train. Hopefully, if you didn't check a bag, you can go directly to getting on the bus to where your car is parked, and they bus you to where the parking lot. Or you can get an Uber, or your friend is going to come and pick you up. But then if you did check a bag, now you got to wait at the baggage claim. And that might take an hour or so before all your stuff starts getting on the conveyor belt. And then here you come in an inflatable costume. Get out of my face. Like, get out of my face, okay? I would be irritated. I'm sorry. And you can say, Leah, you hate fun. Then, girl, I hate fun. I hate it then, okay? So we see them in the car together, and Bronwyn basically says that she's still irritated about the situation between her and Todd, but her and Todd are married, and she chooses to be married to Todd. So it is what it is. Now, we know present day that at the reunion, Bronwyn is going to announce that she's separating from Todd. Now, here's my thing. I just hope that Bronwyn really thought about this decision. I'm not a fan of grumpy old Todd, and I'm not really a fan of Bronwyn, but I do not believe that people should stay in relationships that no longer fulfill them, whether it be romantic, platonic, or business. But I'm hoping she thought about everything, because in the articles that I read, it doesn't seem like they filed for separation. It seems like they are just taking this break apart from one another. But I've also read in another article, and I talked about it in the spicy corner, that it seems like one article I read said it was amicable, like they both want this. Another article I read said that Bronwyn is the one pushing for the separation and possibly a potential divorce. Okay, so I'm just like, okay, girl, I just want to make sure that we don't get another Kyle Richards situation like we have on Beverly Hills. Because Kyle frustrates me. And I think it's an added layer of frustration because I know she's a Capricorn like myself. And oftentimes I feel like we think about all the possibilities of a situation, and the way that Kyle moves with this whole separating from Mauricio frustrates me, because I'm like, did you think about what it would be like if he chose not to run after you or chase after you? Did you think about what it would be like if you and Morgan did not maintain that relationship and now you're at home by yourself because all of your daughters are off living their lives? Like, did you think about that? And I feel like Kyle hasn't, because the way that Kyle talks about her relationship with Morgan and Mauricio and how she feels, it feels like you're a lonely person that really did not think what it would be like when you were truly by yourself. Like, what life will be like when your daughters are off living their lives, when your husband or your ex-husband has gone off and found him another girl and he's living his life, or you potentially might be dating women or men, but you don't have a solid relationship. Like, have you poured into your friendships with other people? And it doesn't seem so with Kyle. And it's frustrating because I'm just like, Kyle, I don't get it, you know? And so I'm hoping Bronwyn has thought about everything before making such a life-changing decision. And I also hope that Todd still is present in Gwen's life, because it would be sad to see him switch up on Gwen after knowing that her father, she's never met her biological father. On top of that basically her father's family treats her like she's invisible. So it would probably be re-traumatizing if Todd switched up on her and started to act the same way as her biological father's family did, because he's no longer married to Bronwyn. So yeah, the conversation continues on where they're in the car and Bronwyn was like, what did you advise me not to do or advise me to do before you left? And Todd said, I told you not to get involved in that airplane situation. And she said, well, I did. And I got in trouble. And he's like, so what happened? And she basically says, well, Whitney's mad at me because I told Meredith what she said about her because I felt like Meredith needed to know. So then Todd says, this group needs to just sit down and have a kumbaya session because everyone, including you, have probably done things to each other. Bronwyn looks surprised. Like, surprised, one, because she's engaging in this conversation about the group, but two, because Todd said, girl, you probably just as messy like the rest of them and has some culpability in this. And Bronwyn says, well, I want the group to move forward, but the issue is everyone is worried that other people still have like tea on them, so they never really want to go past a certain point. And so Todd is just like, okay, like you can tell like he's trying to engage in the conversation, but he's also annoyed with talking about this. And Bronwyn says, well, I want to have a spill the Boston Tea Party. She says, I feel like we need to write a new constitution for our friendships. And hopefully this party where we spill the tea on each other could help everyone reset and we move forward. And I said, girl, when y'all did that last time at the end of last season, you were sitting at that table in tears, girl. Angie says your ears were pinned to your face. I don't know if this is going to go the way you think it's going to go, but okay, girl. So then the next thing we have is with Whitney and Justin. I'm going to be honest, I was so confused with this because this is my second time watching the episode, but I feel like Whitney was trying to sidestep accountability for the role she played in her business not doing well. So we see her sitting out on her porch. She's drinking wine, but you can tell that she's been crying and sulking. So then Justin comes onto the porch and he sits down and he's kind of looking at her and it's awkward because she's not saying anything. And he's like, so what are you thinking about? And she says, well, I just saw a large sum of money like get transferred out of our bank account. And she was like, that hurts. And so Justin says, well, I think we should make it right to the people that we owe money to. And I said, yes, you should. Because if you don't want to do it, then we're going to have to start treating you the way that y'all was treating Lisa about not paying people that she owe. So Whitney ends up saying, it just sucks because my intuition going in, I had hesitations, but I didn't listen to myself. So Whitney says in the confessional that Wild Rose Beauty was merged with a new entity and it was a really bad decision. And this company was a new company that Justin was working with. And the owner, like, it went under, I guess, right after she got with that company. She was like, right now she's fighting to get back her biggest assets, which would be Wild Rose Beauty, the name, the brand, and the inventory. Okay? And what was crazy to me is Whitney admitting that it was merged with an MLM. because she says that she wanted to get Justin away from MLMs. And it's like, Whitney, you are a liar then. Even though you try to act like you're so honest, but you are a liar, because a lot of people on TikTok, the TikTok, detectives were very much so saying that, girl, you had merged your business with an MLM and not to buy, and being like, oh, this is the brand and all that stuff. And you are like, your business was not an MLM. Now you're coming out this season admitting that it is an MLM because you merged it with an MLM. You lie. You lied. Okay. So she says, I don't feel like I was given the truth or told the truth. And Justin says, neither do I. I don't think I was either. So Whitney said, my vision was for my products to be in Sephora, Ulta, and Target. To get you away from MLMs, Justin. And literally a week after we made the decision, I got a direct meeting with the buyer for Sephora. And she was like, Wild Rose Beauty was supposed to be in big box stores. I don't understand why Whitney is trying to do this like skincare. Is it a skincare or a makeup line? I think it's skincare. But it's like, I don't look at Whitney and think, oh my gosh, she has amazing skin. I feel as though this might not be where she needs to like focus her attention, because I remember when her and Heather got into it, and Heather basically told her the same thing that Angie told Lisa, that her products were subpar and collecting dust at Beauty Lab. So I'm like, it feels as though you're putting a lot of energy into something that has not been profitable for you. So she says, Whitney continues on by saying, you guys flashed numbers in front of me and I just felt like I could trust it because you were a part of it, but I'm really mad at myself for going with it. And Justin kind of looked at her like, and I said, well, she ends up saying that Justin kept saying that they were going to take Wild Rose Beauty to the next level, make it like $1 billion industry. I said that was a lie because it was never going to be that, okay? And she said, you finally started to help me because I've always wanted you to be a part of the business because we work so good together. She then goes on to say, this was the first time you seemed interested. The first time you believed in it. And I'm like, okay, Justin believes in it. We're working together. This is what I want. And this can't fail, but it did fail. So Justin ends up saying, I don't know what else I can say other than I'm sorry. And so Whitney's like, I don't think you understand that I'm resenting you. And I'm trying my best to like separate you from the business, but it's hard. And so in the confessional, the producers end up asking her, do you feel like things have changed in your marriage? And Whitney starts to get emotional and starts crying. And she's like, I'm really struggling with it because when the business was crumbling, she said her and Justin became like really close together. Now that we're kind of a few months out from that situation initially, it's like, I can't separate my business from my marriage. Like it's merged all into one. And at this point, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I'm just here because I'm still upset and angry. So then Justin ends up saying, I definitely get what you're saying. And he was like, I've always had belief in your business before. And he was like, I was thinking the business was going to be successful. I thought this company was going to help us out because I wanted us to work together as well. And so Whitney was like, but that was my baby. And she was like, besides you, the kids, and our family, like, that's only what matters to me. But then I'm also like, if that was your baby, Whitney, why did you not vet the company? Because to me, Whitney is acting like Justin forced her to make this decision. He forced her to go in on this MLM. When I'm like, if something is your baby, you would care for it and vet everything before actually like signing your name on the dotted line. So to me, this conversation just feels like Whitney is trying to shift all this blame onto Justin and not really evaluate her actions. Because I'm like, if you had intuition that this was a bad idea, why didn't you listen to yourself? Because that was your way. And I don't know if Brittany is a religious or a spiritual person. No, she's spiritual, I'm guessing. But like, I've been taught that whenever you have like an uneasy feeling and you've prayed or you ask, God, the universe, or whoever you pray to like give you a sign, that feeling is your sign. So if you already felt uneasy, then that should have been your first go-to to be like, you know what? We can't do this. I can't do this. No, ma'am. And I don't know. I just feel like she is not trying to take ownership. So after this, we end up seeing Heather and one of her daughters dressing up the last daughter's room. We find out that she's going to, I think, a school in Tampa. I didn't care about this scene. I thought the room decorations was really cute. What I gathered from it is Heather is ready for her kids to leave the house so she can live her life. She has always been focused on getting them to the age of 18 so then that they can go off and live their lives so she can have her life, because even when she was married to their dad, she was doing everything by herself. Editor Leah here. The audio got messed up, but pretty much Heather is excited for her daughters to go off and live their lives and attend college because she poured so much into them and she raised them by herself. She now feels like she has time to invest in herself and what she wants out of life. So the next thing we have is with Bronwyn and Muzzy, and it was an awkward scene to me, only because I was expecting Muzzy to be like the mean curmudgeon lady we saw her be, but she was a lot nicer. It was reminiscent to when Sutton finally had a conversation with her mom, but Muzzy seems nicer to a certain degree compared to Sutton's mom. But basically, they are like, sending pride flags to non-governmental buildings. Bronwyn lets us know that she's a supporter of the LGBTQIA community. She also lets it be known that Utah passed a law where governmental buildings or government buildings cannot fly pride flags anymore or display them. So Bronwyn posted on her Instagram that, hey, if you're a non-governmental building, send me like your location and I will send you a pride flag, I guess free of charge, because she's going to the sex stores to go and get the flags. She has Muzzy going with her. The funniest thing is that lady is in there with her pearls. Bronwyn gonna be like, you see those dick balloons? Muzzy was like, don't say that word. Don't say that word. Then they go by this thing of vibrators. And Muzzy is like, oh my God, what are these? And Bronwyn's like, well, I could get you one. And, we can go look up what they do. And she was like, no. I said, gosh, you got your mama up in this sex store. No, good and well. This is not her seat. But Muzzy was being a good sport about it. So Muzzy ends up coming to sit down with Bronwyn as she's like, I guess putting the pride flags in envelopes to mail out. And she thanks Muzzy for participating, even though she knows these are not like Muzzy's beliefs politically. So Muzzy was like, girl, I don't care. I like that you make me do fun and crazy things. And she's like, where I'm at now in my life, I don't care a lot about what people think about me. I'm grown. And so Bronwyn was like, I wish I could get there. How old? Like, when does that start happening? When I turn 80? And Muzzy was like, no, maybe when you turn 60. And Bronwyn says, I really do care about what other people think, especially you. And Muzzy was like, you should care about what I think about you to a certain extent, but it shouldn't be that debilitating to you. So then as the conversation continues on, Bronwyn just expresses how she really does care about her mom's opinion, and she's grateful that their relationship has gotten a lot better since her coming to stay with them as her father is in the facility, the memory care facility. So while they're sitting there, Bronwyn says, I know you haven't agreed with a lot of the choices that I've made with my life. It's crazy that the thing that you hated the most about me having Gwen, and now Gwen is the thing that you love the most about me. And so then Muzzy ends up saying, no, you're a great mom. And she was like, you need to be proud of what you're doing with your daughter. Bronwyn gets emotional immediately, like immediately. And you could tell this was something that she really needed to hear from her mom. She was like, I've always wanted you to be proud of me. And Muzzy was like, I am proud of you. And this is like, I think this is where like nuance comes into play when you think about the older generation. Like Muzzy would be a boomer, right? And Bronwyn would be a millennial. Or would she be a Gen Xer? Either way, she's from a different time where for some families it was the norm of like kids were like supposed to be seen and not heard. There was not a lot of affection, not a lot of money for certain people. So it didn't seem like there was a lot of love to go around. And you have to think about how some of our parents were raised in order to give them grace and to give yourself grace with dealing with them. But I do think there does come a point in time where when you know that what you're doing is detrimental to the people around you, you have a responsibility to change it, So it's not an excuse, but I do think it explains how some of the older generation is. So Brahman was like, I needed to hear that. That means so much to me. And Muzzy says, I didn't hear that from my parents. She was like, I know my parents loved me, but they didn't say it to us, but they always expected more from me. And that's how I feel about you. And she was like, you always tell Gwen she's the best thing and how smart she is. And she was like, I think that's wonderful because you're not doing the things that I did. You're doing. Editor Leah here again. Probably time for me to get a new mic. But basically, Muzzy was giving Bronwyn her props about how she raised Gwen, stating that, you're doing what works for you. And even when it didn't work, you always keep trying. And Bronwyn is just excited and very appreciative that her mom finally said the words that she always wanted to hear. And so then Muzzy said, I would give you a hug, but I know that's not your thing. And Bronwyn was like, yes, I'm prickly like a hedgehog. And she reiterates in her confessional that she's happy that her and her mom are in a better place. Again, I thought this was weird because this felt like a complete 120, not a 180. And I'm wondering if Bronwyn told her mom, girl, you gonna get ate up with the way that you spoke to me. So we need to make this look a little better. But I'm glad she got to hear these words from her mom. It's important to tell your kids how proud of them you are, how much you love them, because if you don't, they go seeking it out in the wrong people. And that could be in a romantic relationship or a platonic relationship. There have been a lot of friendships that I have seen that some of my friends have been in, or just some of my associates have been in, where I'm like, nobody should treat you that way. But then when you meet their parents, you're like, oh, you think this is normal because this is how they treated you. So good for Bronwyn and Muzzy. So it is finally time for Bronwyn spilled its Boston Tea Party. I will say though, she could have did a better job welcoming everybody to the tea party, because Angie gets there first and she's confused. She's dressed like Betsy Ross with the 13 colonies flag, and they just drop her off on a loading deck. And Angie is like, am I in the right location? Like, Angie's starting to feel like maybe she got set up, because she's just like, nobody is here. So then we see Brittany, Heather, and Whitney in a car together. They're all confused as to why they're dressed like from like characters from Hamilton, and like what this is all for. Brittany lets them know that she actually met up with Meredith at the park, and they get a giggle out of it, saying like, it sounds like she wanted to duel you. And they were like, I guess. And so Brittany says no, she felt so contrite to like actually apologize to me. And I admitted that bringing up the TikTok was shady, and we let it go. So then Whitney was like, so she did not apologize for verbally assaulting you? And Brittany was like, no, she apologized for hurting my feelings, but I don't want to harbor any of that hatred anymore or being angry. I just really want to move forward and be in a good place. So Heather was like, I mean, I guess that's okay. It's not like, do you think you can move forward with her? Like, you think you'll be friends? And Brittany was like, I don't think we'll ever be friends, but I'm cool with moving forward with her, So that's why I accept it. So then Whitney has like a scowl on her face. Like, she's really like, and she's like, so you're accepting her apology? And Brittany's looking at her like, yes, how many times do I have to say it? And Whitney was like, I think that's great for you, but I know I couldn't do it because I need a real apology. So in the confessional, Whitney is like, I mean, I'm glad that Brittany feels good about this situation, but Meredith accused us of being liars, and she's always doing that. And I feel like it's time that like we actually call that situation out. So in the other car, we end up seeing Meredith and Lisa, and they're asking the same thing, like, where are we going? What is this for? And Lisa was like, girl, don't ask me. I don't know. But then Meredith shares with her that she also met up with Brittany, and she said, we agreed to be respectful and kind towards each other. And Lisa said, I don't think that's going to last long. And I agree with Lisa. So Brittany, Whitney, and Heather get to the loading dock, and Angie like breathes a sigh of relief, because she's just like, girl, I thought I got set up. Heather pulls out a flask. Why did Angie put her entire mouth on the flask? And I said, girl, why are you acting like you never like waterfall to drink before? So, editor Leah here again, the audio, but pretty much after they go back and forth about teaching Angie how to waterfall a drink from a flask, we then end up seeing Lisa and Meredith get there. The energy was very awkward. It actually reminded me of the church scene when the women were waiting for Lisa and Meredith because they weren't sure whether or not they were coming to Mary's church. The same thing happened. Heather is critiquing Lisa's outfit, but y'all know Lisa does not dress up. So they all make it on to the dock, and then next thing you know, Bronwyn pops up in like a judge's outfit with a white colonial wig on and the American flag. And she talks about how she's been studying for her American citizenship test, and this is a party to commemorate that. Lisa's in the confessional saying, "Girl, I could have sent you flowers. You didn't have to do all of this." Now, mind you, the place that it seems that they are having this event in looks like a warehouse for like props for movies, because you see a bunch of ladders, but then there was also like props of like fake food and animals somewhere. I don't know where Bronwyn decided to house this, but I was like, all right. So she takes the women to this table, and it has a bunch of colonial wigs just like hers. And then she shows them the area where they're going to be having the party. And it was a really nice area. Like, I do think for the space they had, it was a decent size. She has alcohol, food, and then this guy who sells hot dogs. So the women are all giving Bronwyn her props for the layout of the event. And they're just walking around. People are wondering where Mary is. Angie lets them know Mary is on her way. Mind you, Mary had the funniest scene this episode. So she shows up late to the event, and she's looking at the table where Bronwyn took the women, where they have a bunch of the wigs and stuff. She's looking at the wigs, and then she pulls out her own white wig. She's like, "Oh, I got my own." And the way she did it, I screamed. And then she put the wig on with her beret on, and then she walked into the party. And then Mary was confused by the fact that there were hot dogs there. She was like, "Did they have hot dogs back then? I'd rather go to McDonald's. At least I could get a fish fillet." And I know what that is. I said, "A fish fillet, Mary? That's nasty." So in the confessional, the producers were asking all the ladies a couple of history questions. The first one was, what is the document before the Constitution call? I was like, the Bill of Rights. The fact that they were all struggling except Bronwyn, and I was more concerned about Meredith because I'm like, girl, you're a lawyer. You should know that. I bet you that's like lawyer studies like 101. Like, I was like, y'all didn't know it was the Bill of Rights? Then the next question they asked were like, how many senators are there? And everyone was like 51, right? Because there's one for each state, but there's 100. And then Brittany was like, well, I was salutatorian in high school. I had a 4.2 GPA, but once you leave school, it leaves your mind. But I'm like, even if you weren't salutatorian, if you just understand basic politics, then I feel like the questions they were asking were very simple. But also, I enjoyed learning about history in school. So I don't know, maybe I got a leg up on the competition. So then the scene switches back to the ladies eating and sitting down on the stage. And Bronwyn now announces that they're going to play this spill the tea game. Heather reiterates, like, Bronwyn, the last time we played a game similar like this, you were crying. Does she not remember Puerto Vallarta? And they flash back to when Bronwyn was crying, sitting at that table, when Angie basically said, girl, I like her business plan, marrying a man that has one foot in the grave and the other one on a banana peel. So Heather's just like, I don't see this going well. Then Mary was like, I feel like this is stupid because nothing good will come out of this. And I actually agree. But she basically explains to them that, like, sitting beside all of their chairs are these empty, like, boxes, and you write the person's name on the box, and then you throw whatever tea that you're spilling. After you spill it, you throw it over the ship, like overboard. And they're all like, okay, girl, but you can tell that everyone is like a little uncomfortable. So they start this spill the tea game. I don't know how to say this. Y'all know I like Angie. I tell y'all this all the time. Angie, Mary, and Lisa are the three that I really enjoy the most on this show. I started to like Angie, Mary, and Lisa during season 4, but I really started like them during season 5. this season, Angie is clicking down for me because it feels as though she doesn't really have real issues with Lisa per se. It just feels as though they're like, she's nitpicking. And when they start the spill the tea game, she picks Lisa to spill the tea on. And I'm like, was there nobody? I know there's other people that y'all talk about. I know it could have been Bronwyn. I know you talk about Heather. I know, like, I don't believe that these girls don't talk poorly about each other. But I'm like, why did you say Lisa? Other than, if you mention Lisa, because Lisa is so reactionary, what she need to work on at her big age, she's going to get confrontational with you and you need a reason to argue. I don't get it. Because after watching episode 13, it was just kind of like, Angie, why do you have a problem? It seems like everything she do is a problem for you. And Angie and Lisa remind me of sisters. Like, they both have to get the last word in, and they get very easily annoyed by each other. But hey, so Angie says she's spilling the tea on Lisa. So basically she admits that after Lisa told them when they were on the yacht trip that she was purchased, like that she purchased a horse, that she went and called somebody and did some digging and found out that it's not true. So we actually see a flashback when they're on the yacht and Lisa was like, oh, I'm going to the Kentucky Derby and I bought a horse. And everyone's like, for real? And then we see Angie in her cabin with Mary saying that she actually contacted the lady who owns the stable that the horse is housed. And she says Lisa didn't buy the horse. She's renting the horse. So she was like, is she lying? Like, why would she lie about that? So Lisa says, I own a horse. It's not nothing grand. And I'm looking at getting a second one. And it's nobody's business about what I buy and what I purchase. So in the confessional, Angie is like, Lisa brags, which is true. Lisa is very braggadocious. And she's like, if she purchased a horse, we would have seen photos of it, and we have yet to see photos of the horse. I will give Angie that. Like, Lisa is very braggadocious. If she did buy 2 horses or 1 horse, she would have that horse plastered on her Instagram. So it does make it very, like, suspicious. Like, girl, what's up with you? What's up with you, okay? So Lisa says in her confessional, at this point, I think about, like, she's ready to leave this place, and that says a lot for her being a New Yorker. It didn't make sense about the Boston Tea part. I didn't understand what Lisa was trying to say. Other than what it boils down to is she's irritated that Angie is trying to either bust her out about lying about buying the 2 horses, or that Angie actually... I didn't get what Lisa was trying to say about being a New Yorker and, like, the Boston Tea Party. It didn't make sense to me. But all it boils down to is that Lisa is annoyed that Angie might be telling the truth about her not purchasing these horses, and she's irritated. So the next person is Brittany. Brittany says she doesn't have any tea to spill, but she wants to know who told Jared that she was flirting with Jay Wow. Mary is like, who the hell is Jay Wow? We find out that Jay Wow is the second officer that was on the yacht. And I was like, Brittany, this wasn't even anything we needed to, like, discuss or dissect, because Jared told you when y'all were walking in the park that Justin told him. So if Justin told him, the only other person that he would be talking to is either Heather or Whitney. So it's either one of them. And, like, what's it called? Deduction skills will let you know more than likely it was Whitney. And turns out it was Whitney, because they give us a flashback of Whitney doing a voice to text message to Justin saying that Brittany is out here having a good time, flirting and all that stuff, because Lisa blurted out, you did kiss him. And she said, no, I kissed him on the cheek. And then Mary's like, are we really talking about Jared? So then Whitney was like, girl, I'm the one that said it. And Heather was like, see? She's the one that said it. And she was like, I didn't say that you were, like, making out with anyone. I just said that you were having a good time and flirting. But, like, I didn't think it was be a bad thing. So then I think Bronwyn was like, can we move on from this? Because I'm sick of hearing about Jared. And everyone was like, yeah, let's please move on. So Brittany is kind of irritated in the confessional, saying, I guess I'm going to have to take this half-ass apology and move on. Then Heather decides that her tea is going to be about Bronwyn, where she says she's been having a good time talking about Todd making out and farting with somebody. Bronwyn is irritated by this, and you can clearly tell it in her face. And she was like, don't you think that's hilarious and it's nonsensical? And then Bronwyn said, girl, throw that effing box in the river. Like, throw the box over, Heather. And she was like, you don't think it's funny? And she's like, Heather, you spilled your tea. Throw the box over. And then like Heather throws the box over, and then she apologizes to Bronwyn. She was like, I'm sorry, I'll leave it alone. So then Bronwyn basically says her tea is about Whitney. And she says, Whitney, you and I had lunch, and in an effort to be a good friend to Meredith, I wanted to warn her about something you said that I felt like went too far. So then Whitney ends up saying, then why didn't you tell me you had an issue with it at the table? Because you were laughing. And Bronwyn was like, no, I was not laughing. Like, I did have an issue with it, but Bronwyn, you was laughing. Like, I don't know. It wasn't like a ha type of laugh. It was more like, ooh, girl, like, I don't want no parts of this. Like, it was like a nervous kind of like, ooh, you in trouble kind of laugh. So I get what Bronwyn was saying, but I also understand what Whitney is saying. You didn't tell me that what I said was wrong. You actually seem to be okay with it. So Bronwyn and Whitney get into it, and Bronwyn was like, Whitney is like, I know how to maintain a private conversation, you don't. And Whitney was like, well, girl, you should have took what you had going on or how you felt about Meredith up with Meredith. Like, I just felt like what was said wasn't like something that like she should be ambushed with. And then Whitney was like, you're trying to make me look bad in front of Meredith. And I'm like, no, you look bad by accusing someone of being alcoholic and a pill popper. She was like, you're making me look horrible in front of Meredith. And then I agree with Bronwyn when Bronwyn said, well, if you are uncomfortable with the way you feel about her knowing about what you're saying, then maybe you should have never said it. And I say, yeah, because you knew it was going to get out because you said it on camera. It just didn't get out the way you wanted it to get out, Whitney. So then Whitney says, you think I'm going to call somebody and that's belligerent? So Meredith said belligerent. Like, she like, oh, okay. So she's like, you want to go there, Whitney? Like you really want to go there with me? And Whitney was like, well, everything I'm saying is the truth. And she was like, you're the one that was taunting Brittany for 6 hours. And Meredith was like, no, I did not. No, I did not. And then she's like, what kind of crazy pill are you on? What kind of crazy pill have you taken? And then Lisa says, apparently the one that you've already taken. I said, okay, Lisa. Because y'all know Lisa can't read, but that was a good comeback. That really was a good comeback. So they're starting to, Meredith and Whitney are starting to go back and forth. Like I said, Whitney and Meredith are really going at it with one another. And Whitney is like, so I'm a liar. And you're always telling us our experience of you is not it's not true. And she's like, I'm not a liar. And Meredith is like, yes, you are. You are a liar. So in the confessional, Whitney is like, I hate being called a liar because I'm honest to a fault. I said, that's a lie because all last season you were refuting that your business was merged with an MLM just for you to admit in a roundabout way this episode that it was an MLM. Like, we've seen Whitney be malicious. We've seen Whitney be manipulative. We've seen her lie on people. So I'm not understanding this act of trying to be so virtuous. It doesn't work, Whitney. So Whitney is getting tired of Meredith saying that all the women lie. She was like, all Meredith does is call us liars. So she goes on to call Meredith a pill popper and an alcoholic. And I said, see, Whitney, this is why I don't believe you really care about Meredith, because if you genuinely did care about her, you would speak to her in a different manner. Even if you were angry with her, if you really thought she had a substance abuse issue. So now it feels like you're maliciously throwing that information out there to tarnish her character because you're mad at her and you don't like her at this point, like right now. So Meredith gets frustrated and she gets upset and she ends up gifting everybody these gifts. It has caviar and a drug test in it. Everyone was gagged by the drug test. You hear Angie read it out, multi-drug urine test. And then Brittany's in her confessional saying, I've never taken a drug test. So then Whitney is like, who goes and buys 7 drug tests? And Mary's like, that's a lot of urine right there. And so Meredith is like, I'm happy to take a drug test every day of my life. She says, over the years, I've let y'all know that I like to drink and occasionally I like to have a gummy. But if y'all are going to keep accusing me of like substance abuse, then I feel like it's only right that we all take this test. So you can take a test. So you have Brittany in her confessional saying this whole plane situation has like graduated past the Brittany of it all and we're in a different territory. So then Whitney was like, do you want me to lift up my skirt and pee? And I'm like, yeah, go to the bathroom. And this is my thing. Some people were saying that this was a performative move by Meredith, but I actually liked it because what you're not gonna do is constantly say that I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, and then when I pull up tests, like I bring drug tests with me, you're not about to go piss in that cup so we can go test it. Because if you can accuse me of it, then I can say, okay, then we can all take a drug test together and see who on what. But immediately, Whitney puts the drug test back in her bag. And I'm like, okay, Whitney, it's giving suspicious over there. What you doing? What are you and Justin partaking in over there that you can't take it? So then Whitney says, the only thing I have in my system is alcohol. If alcohol is the only thing you have in your system, then it should be nothing for you to pee in that cup and call it a day. So then Meredith says, y'all like to spread rumors behind my back and you've been doing it for almost a year. Might as well just, we confront the issue. Let's talk about it. So then Whitney says, the only reason why I have been talking about you is I was reacting to your behavior on the plane. So then Meredith says the things that Whitney are saying is very damaging and it's pretty hard to disprove. And my thing about it is she don't need to worry about me. She need to worry about herself. And I agree. Whether or not Meredith has a substance abuse issue or not is none of Whitney's concern. And again, I hate when people try to shroud like their actions and I care about you. You don't. Like just own that you're going to be an asshole to me because you don't like me. Don't say, well, I'm being an asshole to you because I really care about you. No, you don't. You don't. And Whitney to me is a coward because I'm like, girl, you don't really like Meredith. You're upset with the way that she behaved on that plane. Stand in it. Tell her, girl, I don't like the way that you behaved on the plane. Right now, it's kind of like we're in the territory of I don't like you. I think you're abusing substances and I think you need to get help and leave it at this. This whole I love you. Oh, that would piss me off. That would. I would be nasty as hell to Whitney if I was Meredith because what we not about to do is try to put this narrative out there that I'm abusing drugs, and then when I bring a drug test, you don't want to take it. Okay. So Whitney ends up saying, Mary, you do it all the time. You go to sleep, and when you wake up, you get mad. You did it on the boat. And so Meredith is like, I can't think about things. And even the example that they showed of Meredith getting upset on the boat wasn't enough for me to be like, oh, Meredith has an issue. Because I'm like, yeah, she was pissed because Whitney, you and Brittany just admitted that y'all were looking at a TikTok where this lady is accusing her husband of having a mistress. And you're supposed to be her friend. Why didn't you bring that information to her? Yeah, I wake up and have an attitude with you the next day. What are we talking about? So then Whitney is like, I recognize this pattern of behavior. And she's like, okay, Whitney. She was like, this is a very sensitive topic of something that I've dealt with in my household. And so Whitney ends up saying that I've seen the way Meredith has behaved before. I've witnessed it. And most of the time when people behave this way, it's either drugs or alcohol. And she's like, I don't know what Meredith is going through, but I'm hoping that's not what it is. And see, that's where, if this was a different show, Whitney probably would have got punched in the face by now. Because you just can't be throwing out these accusations. And like I said, you have, I've said in my other reviews, people will believe what Whitney has said because her daddy's a drug addict. So like I said, what I think Whitney is doing is nasty, mainly because we know her father's a drug addict. We saw him season 1 in that toupee. And she knows what she's doing. The argument continues on. We have this moment where Whitney was like, you yelled at me on the plane. And Meredith's like, no, I didn't. And Mary's in her confessional being like, yes, you did. And they actually flash back to Volter where Mary was like, Meredith, you did yell at Whitney saying, show me the TikToks. Don't be an idiot. Show me the TikTok. Lisa's in her confessional saying, this is pretty messed up to her. You have a friend that was upset, and instead of treating her with compassion, you're calling her crazy and saying that she's a drug addict. No wonder she brought the drug test. Are you serious? And the conversation between Whitney and Meredith keeps going on to the point where Meredith is just getting really irritated. And so is Whitney. But Whitney was like, I'm trying to be there for you and I'm worried. You won't let me love you. And I thought that was weird coming from Whitney. I'm like, girl, what? And then Heather jumps in and Heather was basically saying that she feels like Meredith is trying to gaslight them because Meredith is just like, you lie. We all have done pretty horrible things. And what I did is not that deep. And Heather was like, what are you trying to say? You keep telling me that my experience isn't real. And she was like, don't gaslight me. And she's screaming. And then um Heather ends up telling Meredith, I need you to tell me that like you're sorry, that pretty much like what happened shouldn't have happened, so we can all move forward. Heather also says, well girl, you texted me, and told me that you were sorry. And Meredith says, no, I texted you saying I was sorry for my tone. And when they show us the text, it just says, I'm sorry if I snapped at you getting off the plane. I was very upset. I apologize. And so Heather starts focusing on what you said. If I snapped at you, you definitely snapped at me. So while they're sitting there, things kind of die down because Bronwyn decides, especially after Meredith decides she's not going to give Heather what she wants, because Heather just wants her to admit what she did. She was like, oh, I need to go change. So she comes back in this Constitution dress, and she was like, I think we should all new like amendments or a new friendship constitution. So she basically says, I'll go first. Hear he, hear ye, families are off limits. Heather says, hear he, hear ye, be a woman of your word. Lisa says, be the friend that you expect from others, or be the friends you want to be for others. Then Mary says, always hear each other out and always try to forgive. Then Whitney basically says, business and marriage are off limits. Then Angie says, let's not accuse people of things without documentation. And then Brittany hers was always see the good in people. And then Meredith says, hear ye, stop the reactive abuse. And everyone was like, girl, what is that? So then we have them Googling it, and Whitney reads it out, and it says reactive abuse happens when a victim of abuse, physical violence, or shouting at others is like their reaction to what's happening to them. And then Meredith says, Whitney says, thanks Meredith for giving us a definition to your behavior. I'll say this. Do I think that's what's happening to Meredith? No. I just feel like in Housewives, sometimes we focus too much on people's reactions and not what got them there. And that is, in a roundabout way, reactive abuse. Like when you see somebody being abused and then they react out because of it. But this, I don't think is that. I just think the women are really just trying to get Meredith. And I do think it stems from the fact that Heather and Whitney are bothered by Meredith not coming onto their side when they were coming at Lisa on that boat. Because I don't get why we're harping so much on this. And it seems as though Brittany is over it, but y'all aren't. And I think it's, again, a crock of you know what, that Whitney is trying to shroud what she's doing and caring for her friend when we know that's not what it is. All right, y'all. So episode 13, it opens up and we find out that the women are going to Santorini, Greece for their cash trip. We find out at Bronwyn spilled the Boston Tea Party, Angie announced that she was taking the women to Greece. So we show up at her house and we see her aunt and her father, and we see that she invited over Heather and Mary, and they're teaching them some Greek phrases and words to say while they're in Greece, like thank you and things of that nature. So the scene switches and then we go to Meredith's place. Meredith is talking about wearing a blazer in Greece, and her daughter Chloe is looking at her like, okay, girl. And I'm looking at Meredith like, yeah, what is this? You know, like, what is, like, yeah, I've never been to Greece, would like to go one day, but most of the time when I see pictures of people who have been there, it gives a very, like, tropical, like breezy kind of vibe. A blazer is not breezy, so I don't understand what Meredith is doing. We then go to Lisa's house, and John is looking at all the boxes and clothes that Lisa has purchased. There's, like, a Gucci bag here, Fendi, Prada, whatever, and Lisa's like, I love my pieces, and, you know, I know I'm bringing Versace, but Versace feels like Greece to me. I said, okay, Lisa. I laugh because I have a friend like that who, if we're going somewhere, it could just be like a 2-day weekend or like, well, a 3-day weekend. I mean, she's gonna buy 3 new outfits. Even if she has outfits in the closet, she has to have vacation outfits. And that's what Lisa gives me. Then we see Bronwyn at her house with Todd. And pretty much she's talking to Todd and telling him that like she's a little nervous about going on the trip because she's hoping that it's not as fiery as the yacht trip. And she's also like, I feel like all the good luck we had with this whole plane incident, if someone get to acting crazy on that plane, they're definitely getting zip tied to the plane seat. And Todd was like, well, you should probably prepare yourself. Then she says she's happy that Angie is going with them because she speaks the language. And Todd was like, that doesn't help you because she could tell them people to lock y'all up. And I was like, well, he does have a point. And so she giggles. Then we see everyone get to the airport. Angie has her Greek flag. And it seems like everyone is excited. We then actually see them get on the plane, which was wild to me because I was like, we have airplane footage. So y'all can't like film each other on the plane. Like, what are we doing here? Okay. While they're on the plane, Heather talks about how she's never been to Greece, but she's excited to go. And she's like, the only thing she knows about Greece is from Clash of the Titans. I've never seen the original Clash of the Titans. I've seen the remake that came out in the early 2000s with that actor who I thought was going to be way more famous than what he was. I don't remember his name, but yeah. Maybe I should watch the original. I don't know. But she's excited to go. We find out that Mary has been to Greece and she's like, the place is beautiful. It feels like it's not even real how serene it is. So while they're on the plane, Lisa is talking about how she is pretty much excited to go to Greece, but she's hoping that this is enough for Angie where she doesn't have to hear about her being Greek ever again because she's just like, she Greeked out. She Greeked out. And I agree with Lisa. There's a level to which Angie does it that's annoying. Like, don't get me wrong. I am proud to be a Black American from the South. Like, doing my family tree and actually seeing pictures of my ancestors really, like, awoke something in me that gives me a lot of pride about, like, who I am. So I understand taking pride in your heritage. It's just that the way that Angie does it, I oftentimes wonder, was she like this before the show started? Because the way her daughter looks at her, it feels like maybe this is not how Angie has always been, or maybe she has always been this way and now she can vocalize like, girl, I'm kind of over it. There is a part of me that feels like Angie does do a lot of overcompensation because maybe she does not feel like she's that connected to the culture. But hey, hopefully she get it out her system. So they finally get to Santorini, Greece. The view that they gave us was beautiful. They don't know their geography. Lisa's saying the sea that she's seeing is the Pacific or the Mediterranean Sea. I was like, I don't think that's it. And then they said it's called the Aragon Sea. Then they're trying to figure out how big Santorini is compared to Canouan and Barbados. They thought it was bigger than Canouan and Barbados, but it turns out that Santorini is bigger than Canouan, but not Barbados. So while they're on the Sprinter and they're talking about all of this, you have Bronwyn, making comments. They're all asking the driver, Nico, is he single? Does he have single friends? And Bronwyn was like, you probably, after hearing all of us talk, want to keep that a secret away from us if you do have single friends. So in the confessional, and you hear Whitney talking about how she's still like annoyed with Bronwyn, like she's still frustrated with her because she feels as though Bronwyn betrayed her trust, and she's like, she's trying to learn how to move forward, but she also realized that Bronwyn has lacks the ability to like keep secrets, and she was like, she doesn't know if she'll ever really trust her again. Like, her expectations of Bronwyn aren't very high. I just feel like Bronwyn has to be careful. I still think that even though Bronwyn feels as though that these cousins like her, they don't really like her. They don't. Like, Heather hasn't liked you since she first met you. And Whitney has tried to become friends with you. And now that you did this thing with Meredith, I do feel as though that, like, they're still going to be gunning for you. And you were first chair for the reunion. If I was Bronwyn, I would be careful because I wouldn't trust them. I would not. I wouldn't. And now that you have betrayed Whitney's trust by telling Meredith what she said, I do feel like Whitney is going to try to find a way to get back at you. She's going to make you feel comfortable, and then she's going to strike. So we see the ladies get to the restaurant. The restaurant was actually like really nice. They have like a family style dinner. The food looked great, by the way. And Angie is toasting, saying that she is really grateful that all the women were able to attend. She sees them all as her friend, and she hopes that this trip deepens everybody's bond. So I think it was Meredith that asked, like, so what are we doing tomorrow? And are we just relaxing? And Angie said, well, probably because we've been traveling for pretty much 2 days straight. So while they're sitting at the table, Angie lets it be known that she got the fat pads underneath her eyes removed. And so she used her chopsticks to show that, like, they go underneath your eyes, they make like an incision, and they break apart the fat pads so you don't look tired ever. And I said, it ain't never that deep for me. Or I guess you don't get wrinkles. So then while they're sitting there, I think it was Meredith that says she likes Botox, but she doesn't like filler. And then Heather says, no, I love filler. Everybody should get filler, you know? And we know she's plugging the beauty lab because she gets filler as well. So then you hear Angie say, what time is it, Heather? And Heather's like, oh. And so we see that she has on this Cartier watch. And so I didn't understand the purpose of it. I was like, this is kind of dumb. But then they started to explain what the issue was. So Lisa wasn't even really paying attention in the beginning until Heather made it be known. She's like, well, Lisa, I got something and you might be a little mad at me, but I bought a Cartier watch. And so Lisa's like, oh, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. So in the confessional, Heather lets it be known that Lisa and Angie were arguing about a Cartier watch, or Angie's Cartier watch, because pretty much Lisa said something to the effect of, like, Angie is copying her. Like, she didn't get a Cartier watch until she got one, or she had hers longer, but they're going back and forth. And so when they were in Los Angeles, there was like a duty-free shop there, and she decided to go to the Cartier shop in the airport, and she bought a watch for herself and Angie. No, not Angie, her watch for herself and Whitney. We find out that the watch was $6,000, and they were like, oh my God, Lisa's gonna be so upset. And it was funny because in the beginning, when Heather was like, oh, I bought me one, Lisa was like, oh, I'm happy for you. And then the moment when she revealed that Whitney bought one, Lisa's face was like, and I don't know if it's just because she don't like Whitney, or she started to realize that they were doing this to, like, poke fun at her or to get underneath her skin. And so she's like, okay, no, I'm happy for you guys. And so they have them on. Next thing you know, you hear them when they do the flashback say, like, Lisa's gonna think that we're copying her. You know, everyone's always copying her. So Lisa at first was trying to, like, play it off and be like, oh, you know, it's okay. But Heather's in her confessional saying, I can tell that Lisa is mildly irritated by this. She's gonna try to play like she's not irritated. But I'm like, do y'all know how lame y'all look that in order to pick at somebody, you drop $6,000 on a watch? And mind you, I'm not a watch person, but their watches weren't anything that I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, I was like, it's plain. It was a plain watch. And even Mary was like, that's a grandma watch. But she was like, well, we're not spring chickens, but I wouldn't just buy a watch and argue about somebody copying me. And I was like, yeah, I'm on Mary's side. Like, this is kind of dumb to me. I mean, was it that deep for you to spend $6,000 on a watch? But okay. And so basically $12,000 because she bought one for Whitney and herself. And I think she says it was kind of like a BOGO because they were in the airport. The pricing was relatively, I would say, lower, I'm guessing. But I was like, okay, girl. So then they started talking about Angie and Lisa arguing back and forth about the watch. And Angie's trying to make this big to-do about how Lisa is not the only one that has beautiful things. We all have beautiful things, and how, like, they're different people, that she cares more about people and Lisa just cares about stuff. And Lisa was like, no, girl, you're putting that on me. I do care about people. Then they start arguing about, like, Schiaparelli, because Lisa was like, I started wearing Schiaparelli and then you started wearing Schiaparelli. Then when they get back into arguing about the Cartier watch, Angie says, I've had my Cartier watch for years. And then it goes all the way back to 2016. And it was like a family photo of Angie and I think, like, her sister. And she was like, I had one before Electra was here. But she was like, it is what it is, Lisa. We're different people. And then they were like, you're always worried about people copying you. And Lisa was like, well, some people do copy me. Like, what are we talking about? So then Braun was in her confessional saying, this is the type of argument, like petty argument I want to know, like get into. She's basically like, I want to know who got the Rotch first. And I was like, yeah, this is really petty. So it's not that deep, and you can't, like, you could be invested in it, but it's very trivial. I just don't think it's that serious, if you ask me. So as the conversation continues on, Angie is like, well, I had a Rolex, you got a Rolex. Then they start arguing about Porsches. And I was like, this is stupid. Y'all both have a lot of things. So then Lisa switches it up by saying, well, I also like to sit in the bathtub and scroll and all of this stuff and look at stuff. Then Angie says that Lisa is just somebody who's so materialistic. And then Lisa's 2 for 2 because she got Whitney when they were at the Boston Tea Party with that one read, and she got Angie with this one. She says Angie is such a jealous and competitive person. Like, it's gonna take years off her life. She needs to chill out. And she says, I don't know what Angie have or what she drove before, but I know she knows what I drove because I was the one on TV because she was watching me. And I said, clock it, because she was watching you. And we can't act like Angie wasn't auditioning every season to be on this show. Like, Meredith tagged Angie at what's called, I think, season 4 reunion, where she was like, girl, you've been auditioning for this show since season 1, and you finally got on as Jen Shah's friend. So Lisa not wrong when she was like, girl, you know what I drive because you saw me on TV. I said, okay, clock it, girl. So then Lisa brings up how she likes to sit in the tub and like scroll. And then Heather says, well, Lisa, you know that's Meredith's things. And Meredith was like, are you trying to fight with me, Lisa? And everyone laughs about it. I don't know. I just feel like Angie just wants a reason to fight with Lisa. And like I said before, Lisa is very reactionary. So she knows that Lisa will engage in the argument. Because I'm like, why are you trying to announce how different you are from Lisa? If you don't want to be cool with her, you don't want to be cool with her. But also, I feel like she's doing that to cape and try to like really align herself with Heather and Whitney and Brittany and Bronwyn. But I'm also like, y'all need to be careful. Like, I really do feel like they need to be careful when it comes to the cousins, because they're always probably going to be there for each other. And I really do feel like if they continuously make Heather and Whitney feel like they run the pack, it's going to start being like other seasons of the reality shows we see with the Housewives, where like each season somebody is a new target. Because right now it's Lisa and Meredith. Next season can't just be about Lisa and Meredith. It has to be about somebody else. Somebody else has to be the one everyone's gunning for, you know? But they leave the restaurant. They talk about how delicious the food is, and the scene ends there. It's the next day, and they're waking up in Greece, and everyone is just basking in waking up in Greece. The view they have is beautiful, and the villa that they're staying at definitely makes up for how crappy of a trip Angie had when they went camping on the first episode. She even brings up, like, she feels as though she, like, redeemed herself, because I was like, yeah, I've only been camping once, and it was school sanctioned. Okay, this was in 3rd grade. Was I living in Atlanta, or was that St. Louis? No, I was in Atlanta. I think I was in St. Louis. Either way, I was a child, and they took the entire I think it was 3rd grade. 3rd graders, like all of the 3rd graders, we went to like this place in the wood called, I think, like Eagle Rock or something. And we stayed in cabins. And like we did everything. Like they taught us how to like make fires. They had us in the pond looking up like animals and snakes. And it was a lot. It was a lot. But even though I was angry that day, and my dad actually sprained his ankle because he was one of the chaperones. Oh, that's a core memory. We were hiking and he slid down and sprained his ankle. Oh, it was a mess. But that going on that trip was okay because, one, I was inside of a building and there was a bathroom and a shower, even though it had spiders in it. Okay, even though the shower had spiders in it, my God, today. But food was on time, like, you know, and I just feel like Angie did like the bare minimum. Like, I'm like, girl, you didn't have a mini grill. You didn't have a griddle. You had Mary over there eating a hard bagel. It was just a lot going on. So I do feel like she has redeemed herself because the villa that they're staying in is beautiful. Like the view of like, the countryside and then the pool. I was like, you did that, Angie. You did. And then the spread that they had for breakfast looked delicious. So we see Lisa getting her makeup done by a local makeup artist from, well, I guess, I don't know how far Santorini is from Athens, but the girl is from Athens. So she's doing her makeup. We then see the women go outside. They like take their breakfast outside and sit around the pool. And Heather makes a comment about, Lisa, I might be getting them Prada slides. I actually like the slides. I actually have a pair of sandals. They're not Prada, but they look, they're the same color as Lisa's. And I like that color. So I was like, oh, those are actually like really cute. But I don't really like slides. I need a strap. I want a strap. I need to be able to pick up my foot and, get to going if I need to. So they all laugh about that. Meredith joins in and she laughs. But Heather is in her confessional saying that she hasn't forgiven Meredith yet. She feels still hurt and disappointed by her calling her a liar. And she was like, she also doesn't like the fact that Meredith told her if she picked Brittany, their friendship was over. So she's just like, I haven't forgot what she said to me. And I don't know how we're going to rectify this situation. We then see everybody get ready because they're going to go to the beach. And while they're in that car, I'd have been stressed out. I'm not even going to lie. As close as they were to the rocks, I would have to sit in the middle of the sprinter and not look out the window. All right. But we see Meredith and Heather sitting next to each other. And Meredith basically tells Heather, like, at some point, I would like to talk to you and take 2 minutes to explain to you what I meant about what happened last week. So we can, dead the situation. And so in the confessional, Meredith says that she has reached out to Heather multiple times, but Heather does not want to speak to her. She was like, I've tried to contact her before the trip, but she isn't interested in having a conversation with her. So she was like, she wants to explain to Heather that she misunderstood what she meant by calling her a liar. Even though when they did the flashback, Meredith wasn't calling Heather a liar. She just basically said, you've lied, you lie, you lie. And they've all have had moments on this show. It doesn't matter who you like, has lied. Brittany has lied to us. Heather has lied. Whitney has lied. Lisa has lied. Bronwyn has lied. Angie's lied. Mary's lied. Meredith has lied. Did I say Lisa lied? Yeah, like they've all lied. So I'm confused why Heather is trying to make it seem like she called me a blatant liar. She just said, you've lied, which we've seen you lie, Heather. Whitney has lied to us. And y'all all have said horrible things to one another. You have. So I don't get why we're harping on this. Other than, like I said, I feel like Heather and Whitney are just mad that Meredith did not join them in ganging up on Lisa on the yacht. And so this is their way of like getting back at her. That's where my mind is at. So they get to the beach. I actually liked what Heather had on. The whole yellow outfit was really cute on her. And so they end up sitting down near a couple of like umbrella area. It wasn't a cabana, but it was like a couple of chairs with a few umbrellas. And Angie puts on this Greek bucket hat. And Mary is like, Angie, your outfit was way cuter before you put that hat on. And I actually agreed. Like, it would be different if the bucket hat was the same color as Angie's outfit. She had on this like turquoise blue outfit, but her bucket hat was white and that really bright like royal blue, and it really didn't go with her outfit. So I got what Mary was saying. And then Angie was like, well, let me take this off. And I was like, well, Angie, if you like the outfit, nothing Mary can say would make me feel any type of way. I would wear my bucket hat with pride and call it a day. But she took it off. Mary starts explaining what people's faces give. I was like, girl, is this eugenics? Because she ends up saying to Bronwyn and Heather that they have like bucket faces, but bucket faces indicate that they are like brainiacs. Then she talks about oblong faces. Then she talks about, what's it called? Like pie faces. And then she talks about square faces, but people that have square faces are dingbats. And the camera zooms directly into Brittany. I said, whoever on production don't like Brittany, you ain't had to do all of that. You did not have to do all that. So then as the scene continues on, we find out that they are going to eat lunch at the restaurant that's on the beach. And so they're sitting down. Again, the food looks great. And while they're sitting there, I think Angie ends up asking them, have they seen any hot Greek men? And so Heather brings up some guy that was on a pink flamingo. And I thought it was going to be an inflatable. No, it was a paddle boat. So you see this man on this pink flamingo. I couldn't really see his face. The body looked good, and he had some really nice curly hair. That's all I got from it. But Heather was like, oh, he was hot. So then this is where the conversation turns and it gets awkward because Angie ends up asking Bronwyn, have you seen any men like you want to like add to your relationships? Have you seen a second? And Bronwyn looks at her like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, she was like, I'm not in an open marriage. Because I think Angie says your little open marriage. So Bronwyn looks at her and she was like, I never said that I was in an open marriage. And Angie was like, no, you did. And she goes on to say, you said that you and Todd are talking about opening your marriage. And Bronwyn is like, no, I did not. And I was like, Bronwyn, you did say that you would be open to an open marriage, girl. You did say that. Like, you can't say that you didn't say that, all right? So as the conversation continues on, Bronwyn says, Todd and I are not in an open marriage. And so Heather's like, I feel like you're being very matter of fact about this. And then she asks her, like, are you happy? Like, are you really happy? And Bronwyn says, girl, I'm super happy. Super happy. She goes on to say that there's no drama in their household. In the confessional, Heather was like, last time we heard about Todd was looking at women in lingerie and you kicked him out of the house. Like, he had to go sleep at a hotel. And so they flash back to when they did that thing for Brittany for like, trying to get her spirits up after the whole airplane incident. And Bronwyn does say, I was done with the conversation. Todd was talking about wanting to come back home. And I just was like, I'm cool with him being outside of the house for right now. It is what it is. So then Heather is like, I don't know what Bronwyn wants us to think. Like, this is not making sense. So then you end up hearing Heather tell Bronwyn, well, girl, Whitney says, Bronwyn, I noticed you're not wearing your wedding ring. And there was like something that you were announcing to us. And so Bronwyn was like, I don't wear my wedding ring sometimes. I sometimes like wear different things. So then Heather was like, was it a ruse? Like I'm confused. I'm confused. So then Bronwyn says, I mean, I can see you did 4 + 4 and got 5. See, now that would piss me off if I was Heather because she called you stupid. She blatantly called you stupid. She was like, you guys added 4 + 4 and got 5, And it's like, no, Bronwyn, you did say these things. And that's my issue with Bronwyn. Not my only issue. I have my 2 issues is Bronwyn does a lot of things to people. And then when it's done to her, it's like, oh my gosh, and it's kind of like, well, girl, stop doing that. Like when she was upset about Meredith throwing her under the bus about the whole conversation she had with Whitney. Well, you did that to Brittany. What we doing? And then this, because she did this last season where she tells the women a story. Case in point, the cheating story. She tells the women that Todd cheated on her and that the way that she found out is that Gwen saw him messaging some lady on the iPad. But then when she got to the reunion, she was like, it was more of an emotional affair. Nothing physical happened. It wasn't that deep. But like, you were sobbing on the yacht when you guys were in Puerto Vallarta. So it's like, what is it? And I do get what Whitney is saying when she's like, I don't know what Bronwyn wants us to, like, I think Bronwyn wants us to think different things. Or she wants us to think a certain way about a situation, but she's always backpedaling. And I was like, you got me agreeing with Whitney. Ugh, because it is true. So Whitney says in her confessional, at this point, I don't know much about what Bronwyn has going on. It's like, what does Bronwyn want us to think? She puts things out there about her relationship, and then all of a sudden she backpedals, and it's just kind of like, what is actually going on? And I was like, yeah. So then Mary jumps into the conversation, and I thought Mary gave like a solid like critique of the situation where she was like, well, Bronwyn, you can't say stuff or put stuff out there about your relationship. And then when we question you about it, you try to take it back. It does come across like there's trouble. Like you can't sit here and pretend like you didn't have a conversation with us about your relationship. Like you can't. And that's true. So then Mary ends up saying like what Heather is saying is true. Like you can't tell us that you didn't have that conversation. So it flashes back to when Heather was like, so are you done with Todd? Like what's going on? Like, and then that's when Bronwyn tells them like we haven't spoken in days, but she wants time to sit with it. So Bronwyn ends up saying, I never told y'all me and Todd were separating or that I was leaving him. And then I think Mary was like, but we did ask you, are you leaving him? So then Bronwyn says, this is weird that it's coming from you guys. I was very vulnerable and I opened up to you guys and here you are like kind of throwing it back in my face. So then Meredith jumps into the conversation and she was like, I've stood where you in your shoes, Bronwyn. And I'm just letting you know now, like this conversation is going to come back up again. So then Angie ends up saying, like, I'm not judging you. Like, I was open about what you were dealing with. So then Heather ends up asking Lisa, are you going to hook up with any hot guys? Which I thought was out of order because you don't know if Lisa's in an open marriage. And y'all constantly are trying to say that she's cheating on John. And she ends up saying, John is all I need. But then you have Bronwyn sitting there, like, with this annoyed look on her face. But I'm just like, Bronwyn, you keep doing this. I don't understand why you keep telling these people your business, but you keep trying to walk back what you're saying. Like, it's weird because it seems like Bronwyn wants these women to like be her friend, but she also doesn't want them to be that honest with her, or she's not in a place where she can be honest with herself, because you definitely told those women that you would consider an open marriage. Now, did you say you were leaving Todd? No. You said that you're not at that point in your marriage yet. So that was them embellishing or adding their own take on the conversation. But you did say that you would be open to an open relationship, like you're willing to evolve and grow with Todd. So I don't feel like this is coming out of left field, you know? But she looked really upset after the conversation was over. The women get back to the villa and Angie lets them know that pretty much they will be going to dinner at 6:45. So everyone needs to start getting ready. I said 6:45 is a very early dinner on vacation. Like when you're back at home, like in your home state or wherever you are, that's different. But on vacation, I need my reservation to be like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Now, don't have me trying to eat dinner at 9 because I'm going to feel some type of way. I need food before then. But like, y'all were just at the beach. Like, if I'm at the beach, I like to get into the ocean. So that means sand go be in places it's not supposed to. So I need to take a good shower. I'm going to want to, put my oils, do my lotion and all that stuff. Then I'm probably going to want to put a robe on, or if I have extra night clothes, I'm putting on my night clothes and I'm getting in bed and taking a good 40-minute nap. Then I'll wake up and then it'll be time, So like 8 o'clock is a good dinner reservation. So I was just like, 6:45 is kind of early, bro. So we see the women starting to get ready. There was this awkward conversation between Heather and Whitney that did not make sense to me, because Whitney was like, do you want to get water? And Heather was like, if we get water, we won't be able to shower. And I'm like, what? Unless water is different over there in Greece, I'm like, in the villa, there was a kitchen. So why couldn't you just go get water in the kitchen, drink you a little drink of some water, and then walk yourself up to the shower? Like, I was so confused. So then we see a conversation take place between Mary and Heather, where Heather is like completely ready to go out to dinner. Mary is still getting ready. We see Lisa lounging in the bed trying to look up what the weather is in Santorini. And Mary is letting Heather into her room and she's like, Mary, I don't know what to do about Meredith. She was like, I feel like her and I have had such a strong relationship, and now it's throwing me off that she's making these cutting comments. She's calling me a liar, and her refusal to apologize is not what I expected from her. So in the confessional, Heather says Meredith has pulled her aside, asking for a private conversation, but she doesn't want to have a private conversation with Meredith because she feels like Meredith is going to twist the conversation because there's not going to be any witnesses. And She also feels like Meredith has been very dismissive of their friendship. And it's interesting because Meredith feels the same way about Heather, not giving her the opportunity to have a one-on-one. So they both feel like they're dismissing each other's friendship or don't see value in the friendship. So Mary tells Heather, girl, say this to her face. And I agree. If this is how you truly feel, tell her. Tell her. And she was like, be more direct. And Mary also says, Meredith likes to listen to you. So this is your opportunity. Then Heather says, but Meredith always feels like when I am direct with her, it's a personal attack. And so then we have these conversations. She leaves the conversation and we never bring up what happens. Like we talk about it. She feels some type of way, but we never touch upon it ever again. And in the confessional, Mary ends up saying, I was raised to be honest and direct. I don't feel like these women are capable of doing so because they care too much about things that do not matter, which is people's feelings. And then Mary's like, ooh. She was like, you know what? I probably shouldn't have said that. She was like, it just jumped out of my mouth. Here's the thing. You do have to be honest with your friends and you do have to be direct. And that does leave a little bit of you not caring about their feelings to a certain extent. Now, I do think you should care about your friends' feelings. But we know based off of seeing Mary, if Mary don't like you, she'll say anything. She called Heather and them inbreds. So like we know if she don't see it for you, she don't care. But I do feel like when you are direct with your friends, you do have to do it with a tinge of care there, because being direct without care is just being mean, if you ask me. But I do feel like I feel two ways about this whole situation with Meredith and Heather. I feel as though Meredith could just apologize to Heather and be like, hey, I did not mean to call you a liar. That is not what I meant. What I was trying to say is that we all have had moments where we have lied and have said horrible things. And what I did, I don't feel has been as bad as anybody else's. But I did not mean to hurt your feelings, and I'm sorry for that. And they could move on. But I also feel like even if Meredith did what Heather and Whitney want her to do, but since we're talking about Heather specifically, what Heather wants her to do, I don't think that would be good enough for Heather, because I do feel like Heather really wants to like stick it to Meredith because she wasn't on their side on that yacht. Because this does kind of feel out of left field, because Heather did not care that much about Brittany when all of that stuff was going down with Brittany. And I feel as though if Heather really was that close to Meredith, I don't get why she didn't have a one-on-one with Meredith and had a one-on-one with Brittany. If you feel as though both of y'all those relationships mean something to you. It just feels like Heather just wants to show out in front of public. Like she needs an audience and she's trying to recreate the whole like receipts, timeline, proof, everything. It feels like that's what she's trying to do. Like every time they have like a table scene, she did it on that yacht with Lisa and now she's doing it with Meredith, and it's weird to me. It is. But I do also understand from Heather's perspective that like it does feel as though Meredith knows how to play like word games with people and play semantics with words and not really say what it is because she is a lawyer, that I do get somewhat wanting an audience, but I'm leaning more to Meredith because I'm like, you keep saying you care about this relationship, but your actions don't show that, Heather. So it is time for the ladies to go to dinner, and Lisa is late. Now, if I got on Lisa Hochstein on Real Housewives of Miami, I have to get on Lisa, girl. There's nothing wrong with you doing glam and all of that good stuff, but you need to be on time, especially if other people were on time. Like, they end up leaving at 6:40. Like, Angie was not playing with them. And initially, I was okay with Angie having an attitude with Lisa because she said something in the confessional to the effect of like, girl, we're halfway across the world and you powdering your nose. Like, are you serious? Like, you're like, come on. So I got that. But she's starting to get on my nerves. Like, especially when they were walking around Santorini and they went into the little boutiques, it's starting to feel like Angie is trying her best to like justify why she no longer wants to be cool with Lisa, when it's just like, okay, just don't be cool with her, girl. Stop being nitpicky. So everyone is like leaving while Lisa is still getting her hair and makeup done. They then, I guess, get dropped off by the golf carts, and they're walking on the side of the road. Heather, Whitney, and Brittany are talking about, oh, let's hitchhike. Girl, if you don't hitchhike in your own country, why are you hitchhiking in another country? And I would say this to foreigners, too, coming from other countries. Don't be hitchhiking in America. Don't do that. Don't even hitchhike in your country. People are crazy. I've seen too many documentaries of people hitchhiking, and next thing you know, their body parts is floating in the river. Okay? Now, don't do that. Don't do that. So Whitney has her finger up, and the next thing you know, she takes a tumble. They're like walking, and then there's like an incline, and she slides down it. And so Brittany is like, oh crap, and she tries to help Whitney, but like she's not like really stable because I think Brittany also had on like wedges or some type of heels, so she couldn't help her up. Heather basically left them. Then a good Samaritan comes running down the street to help Whitney up, and Whitney tells Heather, oh my gosh, a hot man just helped me, Heather. And Heather's like, oh my gosh, like a princess. And I said, okay. So they finally get into like some of the little, like the shopping area, and we see them break up into two groups. So Bronwyn, Mary, and Meredith are shopping in different shops, and then the rest of the ladies are shopping in different shops. We actually do see Lisa walking around Santorini by herself after getting her hair and makeup done. She's taking video, she's taking pictures, like she's doing fine by herself. So they get into this first shop, and the group is Heather, Whitney, Brittany, and Angie. And Heather's like, well, how long does glam take? And Angie's like, I really don't know. So then Whitney was like, well, girl, it only took me 5 minutes to get ready, and I used Heather's makeup. So then Heather ends up asking Angie, well, did she call you? Like, or text you? And Angie's like, not a peep. So then in her confessional, Heather had the audacity, okay, to say, I would hate to be crippled with that type of insecurity about my physical appearance, but clearly confidence and insecurity are not like Lisa's fault or a problem for her. Heather, you spent over $200,000 on augmenting your body. And I don't have a problem with women doing, or men, or anybody doing plastic surgery, as long as it's not too much, because people who constantly get plastic surgery give opioid addiction to me, if you ask me. But I will say this, girl, you have gotten veneers, you've gotten eyelid surgery, a boob job, a tummy tuck, and you constantly are getting collagen stimulants placed in your face, as well as Botox and filler throughout the month. And you want to critique somebody about being insecure about their physical appearance? You are the poster child for insecurity, Heather, especially in the way that you operate when it comes to men. On top of that, you allow Jen Shaw, and I'm never going to let this go, to punch you in the face, and then you did not pop her back. You didn't swing back. That screams, I don't like myself and I'm insecure. On top of that, you allow Jen Shaw to call you Shrek and tell you have a Lego built body. But you can tell someone about their insecurities. Yeah, no ma'am. No ma'am. No, ma'am. So then we see them go and look at the sunset. Whitney and Heather are starting to cry because they never thought they would go to Greece. And, they're having this moment. You then have Angie in the confessional saying, Heather is that friend that you want to take on trips. She feels appreciative and feels things very deeply. This is what I wanted for Lisa. My thing about it is, Angie, you doing all this sucking up and praising Heather, but this is the same Heather who acted like she didn't even know you during season 4. During season 4, to the point where you had to tell Heather during season 5, like, girl, we went to high school together. Like, why are you behaving this way towards me? And now all of a sudden you singing her praises because she's the alpha of the group all of a sudden. And mark my words, y'all, I do feel like Heather and Angie gonna have a falling out. I do. I feel like they know that it's getting old with them constantly having issues with Lisa and Meredith, but specifically Lisa, that they are going to have to revamp for next season. And it's definitely giving that somebody gonna be the next target, and it potentially will possibly be Bronwyn, because Bronwyn is my first one because she got first chair, and I don't think them cousins are gonna like that. But then Angie is next, and then if the news or the rumor that's going around that they're auditioning 3 new housewives, then one of those housewives is gonna be next. And because I'm just like, Angie, you doing a lot for Heather. So then we end up seeing Meredith, Mary, and Bronwyn in another store. And Mary is asking Meredith, so how are you and Heather? And Meredith was like, look, I've tried to call her. I tried to say, like, can we have a private conversation? And she doesn't want to hear me out or hear me. So at this point, it is what it is. So Mary ends up saying, I think both of you guys are just hurt and you really need to have a conversation. But Meredith is like, how can I have a conversation with someone who does not want to have a conversation with me? So then we see Lisa meet up with the other girls. They're surprised to see her. They're like, did you see the sunset? And Lisa's like, yeah, girl, I walked around Santorini and I had a good time. So then Angie's in her confessional saying, I can't figure Lisa out. And Lisa's like, look, I love exploring parts of towns by myself. I enjoy that. She was like, I found some killer Birkenstocks. She said, on top of that, I wasn't around negativity. I really enjoyed myself. And I don't think that's wrong. When you're on a girls trip, especially around a group of women that you can tell that majority of the group doesn't like you, having alone time is okay. And I just feel at this point, Angie was being nitpicky. Like, I get her being upset about Lisa being late because of glam, but then when she was walking with Heather talking about it, I mean, like, she's 3 hours late and she shows up in sunglasses. Okay. You wear sunglasses all the time, Angie. You're starting a sunglass line. You gonna be mad if them people put on your sunglasses and wear them all the time? No, you're not. Shut up. So we see them sit down for, they finally get to the restaurant and they sit down for dinner. Meredith actually gives Heather a necklace that she saw at the boutique. And Brown was like, oh, it's a peace offering. Like, it's an olive branch. You should look at it. Heather says, oh, this ain't enough. Like, this isn't going to work on me. And that would have immediately turned me off to Heather. And I'd be like, give it back then, bitch. Like that, give it back. And then Heather's like, because Meredith was like, well, if you don't like it, you can give it back. But even though she's complaining about not liking it, she definitely put it around her neck. So if you didn't like the necklace, then why are we complaining? Like, Heather. So while they're sitting at the table, Mary says, Meredith and Heather, I think you guys need to have a conversation. And it spirals from there. Honestly, what it just told me is that Heather wanted an audience because Meredith was like, I wanted to have a private conversation with you. Heather was like, well, girl, you called me a liar and I don't appreciate that from you. And Meredith is like, well, I'm trying to explain to you that's not what I meant, but you don't want to hear me out. And Heather's like, well, you told me that if I chose Brittany over you, then you were done with me. And I'm the one that told you that the TikTok wasn't that big of a deal. And then Lisa chimes in and she's like, but it's about her marriage. So like, of course she's going to be upset about it. And then in the confessional, Lisa is like, Heather thinks she's Judge Judy. Like, she's the one that's always telling us we're wrong and we're this and it's that. And it's like, you don't have the authority to tell anybody that they're wrong. So then Lisa jumps into the conversation, really getting the heat off of Meredith. Because once Lisa started to bring up, like, Heather, you have done some things to other people. You have said some things to other people. Like, the way that you talked to me at Volters was real nasty. And I felt like you wanted to do it in front of an audience so you can show everyone that's how you can treat Lisa. And I'm going to treat her this way. Heather ends up apologizing to Lisa. And next thing you know, Lisa starts crying. I said, girl, what is going on? Then Whitney starts crying. Whitney starts blaming Meredith for all the chaos and confusion in the group, where she was like, I don't think you, she's like, you're the problem. And I was just like, this is a lot. This is a lot, because don't get me wrong. I do think Meredith's actions on that plane were bad. I do. The way she carried on, even though I haven't seen it from my own eyes, I can believe that Meredith like freaked out. But I feel that the way in which Whitney and Heather are going about trying to hold her feet to the fire is annoying to me, because like Meredith said, we've all done things in this group. And I don't even think what I did was that bad. And I'm like, well, that's semantics. Like, for some people it could be, for other people it couldn't be. I just feel like this is stupid to keep rehashing the airplane incident because we haven't seen it. And at this point, the narrative or the argument should be now is Whitney's calling this lady a pill popper and an alcoholic and saying that she's struggling with her mental health when she don't know. So after Whitney says that Meredith is the problem right now and that she's causing the chaos in the group and stuff, Meredith gets up and walks away. So then Lisa follows Meredith, and Heather is like, see, now I feel bad for being direct. And Bronwyn says, well, just because she didn't receive it doesn't mean that you're wrong for voicing your opinion and your feelings. But you had to say what you needed to say. So then Heather ends up saying it just hurts seeing like where I am in the value of like what I mean to her. And I was just like, well, Heather, she's trying to have a private conversation with you, but you don't want it. I would think someone trying to have a private conversation with me to explain how they hurt my feelings or how they didn't mean to hurt my feelings would be someone showing you how much they cared. I just feel like y'all are nitpicking at this point and it's getting old. Okay.